Thank you very much for staying and coming and listening to all the great speakers today. So it's been amazing. So thank you very much. Now, each one of us, have you ever had a situation in your life where you maybe were stressed out? Maybe where you felt anxiety? Have you ever had a feeling where you were maybe didn't feel very confident? Have you ever had a situation in your life where you wished you could turn the time back? Time back where those things which you maybe were in a situation in? Ever had a situation where you wished, yes, if I could just, from what I've learned, what I've seen there, learn that and turn everything back? Have you ever had that feeling? Ever thought about that? Good. Because, you know, I was a child. I hope everybody was a child at some stage. I was born at a very young age. That's what I remember. And I had a very, very good childhood. And when I was brought up by my parents and with my siblings, we did a lot of things, great together. Childhood was fantastic. And we all probably remember you had a great childhood. You maybe remember what you did with your parents and maybe with your siblings. And you think, hey, this was a fantastic time. There was no worries in the world. Ever remembered when you were a child, you had no worries in the world? You ran around and you remember there was no problem. Everything was taken care of. Your parents took care of everything. Everything was taken care of. And then you grow up, and suddenly you probably, as we just said before, you come into situations where you wish you could turn the time back. But do you know you can actually turn the time back? You think you actually can and have a time machine? Wouldn't that be great, We go into our Mercedes, or our Audi, or a Beamer. Well, they are German cars, I know. I'm a little biased there. But if there is a time machine, what would you give to turn time back? To maybe be and have that again, the time where there was no problems. A time when you were a child and you had a really good time. I think we all can think back. And I was at that point where at the age of 10, I started to swim. I started to be actually pretty good in swimming. I swam national, international swimming competitions for Germany. I was ranked number 12 in my age group at the age of 13 and 14 and 15. And I had a really very good childhood. But until one day, while I was actually enjoying my swimming at the age of 11, I met a man who was at the swimming pool. He was one of the swimming instructors. And at the age of 11, when I met him, he built a good relationship with me. I looked up to him. I was very little aware of what was going on. But I was, at that time, indoctrinized by a man who had, unfortunately, not very good thoughts or very good deeds in mind. And my childhood, therefore, changed. Everything which was fantastic and great suddenly turned, because the person I trusted and the environment where I thought and I was innocent at that time turned around, and I became and joined a cult for 26 years, and I was abused from the age of 12 for a couple of decades. That was a horrific time. I was married, I had 5 children, and through those 26 years of my life, probably I have hurt the people I loved most, because of my emotional roller coaster I was in. In those times, and maybe you had maybe you went through some hardships, and you had some same feelings sometimes where you were suicidal. Maybe you felt had some anxiety in your life. Maybe you were lost. Maybe you were totally destroyed about a situation in your life. whatever it might be, and you wished one day, if you could, to turn the time back. Whatever your circumstance might be. While I was in this emotional roller coaster and went through a very controlling time of my life, which was controlled by a man, and I wasn't the only one. Hundreds and hundreds of other followers within the same cult and within the same, who was himself called in a church and a self-appointed pastor. But you know what? That was a time which we all in our lives probably face. Hardship. Whatever it might have been in you. But for me, the time machine came one day when I realized that I had to break my chains free. I had to break free from that situation. And when I heard that somebody else went through the same abuse as myself, and it was a family member, I thought, that's enough. So I went to the police, I went through all the processes which everybody else does. I wrote 88 pages of a testimony, the longest in the state of New South Wales. I was hoping to see justice. But the biggest issues which I had, the justice never came. And then I was in there and I thought, is there really anybody out there? Is there a God? Is there anything which can help me? So I saw counselors, I did a lot of things, development, self-development books. And you know what? I found a way, for me, in my life, where I could turn around my life, get into that car, and actually have that time machine work for me. Do you want to know how that works? How does that work? How does that work? Do you know how a time machine works for people who maybe have suffered for a long time? And probably you think, well, that's a tough story. You maybe think, wow, I would be happy if I could have a time machine. Or you maybe have somebody in your life and you think, it would be good if I could give them the time machine. Because we all have friends and families who have gone through tough times, or yourself. And through what I did, re-educating myself, through NLP, through self-development courses, I started to realize I can relive and rejuvenate and transform myself, re-empower myself to relive my innocent life. I can start being that Peter Pan which I perhaps missed out many, many years ago. And how did I do it? And how can you achieve to do the same? Is by transforming your mind, your mindset, with the right tools and with the right strategies. Now, in the strategies which I use with my clients, and I have a lot of clients who have gone through a lot of similar trauma as myself. Often when I share my story, afterwards people come up and talk to me and share their story. And I take them through a time machine. The time machine is as much as your timeline in your life. And I take people back to where maybe the trauma or where the trauma has started. I go back to the roots. And we're dealing with the roots, not the bad shoots which we often deal in life, and we're hoping our life will be better. You know, if I earn more money, life will get better. If I do this, everything is going to be fine. Or we're going to bury all our negative emotions, our feelings, back somewhere and just hope it will never show its ugly face. But as we must know, if we don't deal with the problem at the root, the bad shoot will come up, won't it? So when I take the clients back, and 4 weeks ago, 3.5, 4 weeks ago in Australia, I had a client. And he's a businessman, and he had a business with a Scottish person, and that business with the Scottish person, which he had about 20 years ago, was booming. But because he fell out with that person, he was living in the past and couldn't get rid of the bitterness of hoping the change in his life would have been now, while he was now struggling through other businesses. Because of that bitterness, he wasn't able to accelerate to become who he was meant to be, a better person. And at the same time, while we were digging deeper in his personal life, we also found out that he was also abused at the age of 5. And once we cleaned out the root problems, the root of the issues why he was angry and bitter, I got an email back from him. He actually went on holidays with his wife while he was, or 2 days after the intervention I had with him. He wrote back and he says he had the best time with his wife ever on his holidays. And it is the time when you can get into that time machine and go back to the root problem, and we are going to create that you are starting to receive and get the learnings of that event and whatever it might have been in your life, whatever trauma, whatever negative experience. And then we, by dealing with that, we take that into the present time and into the future. And by doing that, we can create the future we want. And you know what? I relive my youth. This is just a body. But hey, I am the happiest person on earth. I live like Peter Pan every day of my life because of what I have gone through, now have changed and experienced the tools and the strategies to create who you really want to be. And that means congruent, forgiving, self-loving, because you can't change the past, but you can be empowered in the present to create your future. So if you are interested in wanting to know more, I just released my book yesterday. Thank you very much to Sydney. And come and see me later on. Thank you. Thank you very much.